Good morning. I hope everyone has got their electricity back on. Last night we drove around Napanee and saw that about half of the town was still without electricity, and determined to make a call early that we would not meet today for worship. But I did want to give you a word of encouragement today. Fortunately, our electric came on early this morning, and I hope the same is for you. Last night, as we sat around without any electricity, we reminded our boys of how before the internet, before electricity, this is how Little House on the Prairie spent their time. And because we're not used to that, I'm sure that it's challenging for many of us to think about that. But here's what I wanted to encourage you with this week. 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, "For we walk by faith and not by sight." And I started thinking about where I am in the season of my life and where we are in the season of the life of our church. And I began to realize how God has prepared me for this season that we are in. As I look back, I see through ministry, through our adoptions, through pastoring a church, that I have had to live by faith and not by sight, and have seen how God has provided and blessed in every way. And I began to think about a devotional that I read recently of Jesus' miracle. The first one that he performed there at the wedding celebration, and he turned the water into wine. And as I thought back about that time and that place, I thought about how they didn't have electricity, and in order for them to make wine, they would take grapes, pour them into a large vat, and then men would get into that vat, and they would walk around in there, crushing the grapes, squeezing out the juice that would pour into a tub. And then it was a long process, because then it would have to ferment and eventually be turned into wine. And the Hebrew word darak, D-A-R-A-K, refers to press. And that word is described of what those men were doing back in that day when they were making wine, is they would tread on the grapes and it would press out the juice. And so then it led me to Joshua 1:3, where the Lord says, "Every place on which the sole of your foot treads, I have given it to you." And it made me think about living by faith and not by sight, because God has destined us to live by faith, and he has destined us with promises that he has given to us. And it's not something that we are trying to get. It's simply that something God has already provided. It just takes us living by faith to claim God's promises and the inheritance and the destiny that he has for us. And so I encourage you, as I continue to encourage myself this week, to live by faith and not by sight, and to claim what God has already destined you and he has already destined us for. May God bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you, and may you know his promises and his blessings as you walk by faith.